Yeah, I think that's good.
Thanks for starting the recording, Erin.
All right, thank you all for joining us today. It's excellent to have so many people here to talk about tarot. And the meeting is being recorded for folks who want to review it later who aren't able to join us today, and also just always the announcement for the folks in the room to be mindful of that. So my name is Matt Richardson. I'm one of the Tarot Standards Subcommittee co-chairs along with Molly Holtz. We'll be doing most of the talking today, and then Christy Netterman from Dallas Municipal Archives, who's also on Standards, is going to be chiming in towards the end. The goal today is to go over the Tarot Best Practices Guidelines version 4.0 that was just released last year at the SSA annual meeting, actually, but we've been planning to spend some dedicated time to discussing it and opening up for questions. That's what's going on today. I'm going to take a moment here and get my screen shared while y'all keep settling in. Okay, we should see the Tarot Best Practices Guidelines.
You're good.
PowerPoint. Okay, excellent. So, as I was saying, we're here to talk about Tarot BPG version 4. I'd be really interested to know how many of you knew how many versions there were and how many of you used them before, but version 3 probably is familiar to folks. But let's start with just a little bit of a brief sort of what's going on here, set the stage a little bit. So just what is this webinar? Why are you all making time to hang out with us today? This is going to be an overview of Standards work and approach on developing the current version, the new version of the Best Practices Guidelines. And we just want you to sort of know where we're coming from, how we thought about this document, and to be able to hear from us what went into it and how we're thinking it might be of use to you and your repositories. We've got, I think, maybe 6-ish members of the Standards Committee on this call, which is fantastic. So you'll be able to hear directly from us and ask questions of us to see if there's anything else that you want to know or challenge or suggest. And it's definitely something that's very open to feedback. And we're interested to hear from you and make this useful. And the heart of this is going to be a tour of that document and just sort of orienting you to it. If you've heard me talk before, you know I'm a big fan of preamble and disclaimers and all sorts of talking before the talking. So the disclaimer here is, what isn't this? And this is not a complete tarot training. We've got an hour slated and we don't expect to talk at you for all of it. There's a full day long tarot training, which I highly recommend if that's something that you think would be valuable to you. There are several of those scheduled coming up this spring. I think there's going to be a few out in West Texas. Stay tuned for more details. If you're watching the recording, there's always going to be more tarot trainings coming. So certainly keep an eye out for those if you're interested in that. Highly recommend. And then this is also not going to be an EAD deep dive. So in the conversation today, we're assuming some basic knowledge of EAD, some basic knowledge of XML. We'll be using some vocabulary from that. If that's not your bag, if that's something you're just beginning to work with, please don't run away. Stick with us. And part of the point of this document is very much to provide an entry point to point you out to other resources. So we have several places where we can say, if you want to learn more about how to use this element, here's a link. If you want to learn more about how this is structured, use this link. So this is an entry point and a way to think about how we use it in our regional context. But we're not going to be able to get into all the details about how to form your XML correctly and that sort of thing. So just briefly, what does Standards do? The BPG has been a lot of it the past couple of years. It's been a very nice project to collaborate on. And we also maintain other documentation like XML templates and other resources to help repositories be able to get their materials onto Tarot in a way that is both as seamless and standardized as possible while also not being prescriptive. We're aware that everybody has their own local situations, but we try to get things to communicate between what Tarot needs and provides and what the local repositories need. So it's trying to bridge that. We also support the Summerly grant process. So we have templates and we send instructions to the vendors to support the encoding of finding aids from those repositories working with Summerly. And we also research and evaluate new descriptive trends. So The one that comes to mind is EAD3. Nobody panic, it's not imminent, but Tara's been through enough changes the last couple of years. We're all feeling pretty good. We can not rush into that right now, but it provides a talking point just to say standards keeps an eye on those things in the field, and we sort of make some notes and we sort of have some ideas and conversations with steering about changes that might be on the horizon for TARO or things our members might need to know about. So you'll see, for example, once we get into the BPG, there's some notes where we've said, oh, in our research, we found that element such and such will be deprecated in AD3. You might want to be aware of that. You might want to consider using a different element. You might want to just sort of begin planning for that. So we just sort of have gathered this knowledge and try to make sure that it's available. Another little research project we have going is trying to learn more about how bilingual, like English Spanish finding aids might work. We're researching some examples out there, sort of pulling some of that together just to inform TARO about how we might evolve in the future. And because I know you're all huge TARO BPG history aficionados, I should have made this a quiz actually. But it essentially has evolved alongside TARO as documentation to help resources along the way. So it was originally created in 2001. There was an update in 2003 to come along with the EAD 2002 DDT standard. It changed again to the third version to go along with the TARO transition to EAD 2002 schema, which was about the time I was getting involved. I'm sure plenty of people were involved remember that transition. And that's the version we've been working through for a few years. But of course, with the NEH grant and the TARO website redesign, there were some new requirements, and we felt it was time to revisit the BPG. And that also gave us the opportunity to ask a question of like, what do we want to get out of it? What is the value of our members to it? How do we want to conceive of this so that it can be as useful as possible? And after a lot of conversation, we started fresh and re-envisioned it over the past couple of years to be a more linear guidance for encoding your finding aids. And it really does run through the element by element guidance and tells you, as you'll see, how you might go about your encoding. And it can be either start to finish if you're encoding by hand, or if you're needing to jump in and just like troubleshoot a particular element that's not behaving, you can jump into that. A little more housekeeping, just where to find the guidelines and templates. The TARO wiki is where this stuff hangs out. If you're having trouble with those links, they show up in this document a few more times in our slide deck. And then also you can always email any of us if you're having trouble tracking something down. But we do maintain a zip file. Molly maintains a zip file, which sort of has everything you need to get going. And this is very much like the BPG itself, but then all the XML templates, the EAD and Xlink files, schema files, XML templates, all sorts of stuff that you basically download once, set up once, and then forget exists until something goes wrong. But that all pretty much runs itself. If you need to download the whole package to get started, it's all bundled there for you. And then we have a separate standalone document, just the PDF of the best practices guidelines. It's also on the PBWorks page, the TARO wiki. And that's what I tend to refer to. So download it, bookmark it. We have it printed out here, the McGovern Historical Center, my archive here in Houston. We have a printout paper copy on our bulletin board, O resources. So however you like to interact with it, you can just grab that file and have it to go. And there's the direct link to it. So the plan for today is to run through the BPG itself, not just to listen to me preamble, but we have 4 sections mainly of the BPG, and I'm going to sort of guide you all through the first 2, then I'll hand it off to Molly, who's going to speak about parts 3 and 4, which are really the fun ones. And then Christy is going to jump in just to show you the XML template briefly towards the end. So the introduction just sort of goes over high-level information about TARO, the BPG, our purposes, some vocabulary, some details. And then the TARO encoding information sort of discusses a bit about schema and sort of things you'll see in the document so you have some sense of how it's going to look. And then creating TARO finding aids has the sort of element by element guidance. And then part 4 is a guidelines table, which is essentially the same information in Excel instead of in Word. It's a giant table where you can see all the required fields, all the attributes, all the details sort of laid out as just a quick reference. So I'm now going to jump out of my slides here and go into the BPG itself. So hopefully everybody's still with me and is seeing my Chrome with the BPG in Chrome there. Cool. So ta-da! Not a lot of new information on the cover here, but this is it. Got to start off with the cover. So this is how the document starts, page 1. So there it is. But then I'm going to try to go tab by tab as opposed to scrolling, just to spare you all from an afternoon headache. So that's how we start out. Got our version information and all that good stuff. Leading into the introduction, we just sort of have a very sort of brief, what is TARO? What is the BPG? What's its purpose? And we tried to draw from the TARO mission and vision to talk about helping repositories and users, connecting archival resources, all that good stuff. And then we took the approach very much of not trying to replicate every bit of detail and not trying to pack everything into this document, but very much to acknowledge and link out to other resources. So you see this section of standards and resources informing our work, which is where we link out to other sections of TARO documentation as well as other standards. So we very much point you to DAX for archival standards. We point you to LOC and EADIVA for the sort of structure of your elements information. And then we sort of get into our controlled vocabularies, and we have a section pointing you towards Library of Congress, FAST, Art and Architecture Thesaurus, all those types of resources for your controlled vocabularies, which was a big topic in the last couple of years of grant work and trying to get people to have their subject headings get into good shape and cleaned up. So we have some, again, not trying to reinvent all of it here, but trying to show you what sort of resources you might want to draw on. The next section is similarly just where else can you learn about TARO? There's a lot of how to do X and Y and Z on TARO that we don't try to maintain in this document. So we link out to TARO Today, the TARO listserv, the TARO wiki, and so on to get you other resources you might need. Information on creating user accounts, information about uploading your finding aids. We point you out to all those relevant places just because we realize that if you're trying to come to a TARO how-to like navigation, our document is not everything, but you might still need to be able to find these other things. So we try to just send you on your way. And then we switch gears a bit and get into our encoding information. So this is where I said we're not doing everything about EAD, but we did want you to sort of not be adrift. If you came to this document, we're trying to just read it and interact with it. So we give you a bit of an overview about how the color coding works. And this is, I believe this is how it works in Oxygen. That's what I use. I think that's what Molly came from too. Yeah, so we have it sort of according to the Oxygen color coding with elements in blue, attributes in orange, values are in this like brownish color. And then these are how our examples are formatted. So it's just trying to let you know what this document's going to look like and how it's going to operate. And similarly, we decided we needed to include at least a little bit of minimal terminology. So we have a brief set of terms here: tag, element, attribute, encoding analog, wrapper, just sort of giving you the very basics of how it is we're talking and what you're in for when you sort of dive into the heart of this. So hopefully that's useful for those who need it, and it's something you can just totally skip over if you don't. Same deal with parent element, child element, just sort of showing you the hierarchy of how this description is formatted and how it's going to appear as you're working through it in your finding aids and how you're going to see it in our document. And then the last slide I've got for you right now before I hand over to Molly is probably the most important of everything I've just said. So that's where you can sort of like stop checking your phones and drift back to paying attention to me, or not, it's fine. But the website required, website warning, website optional table here is something I definitely wanted to stress. This is part of why we felt we needed to revisit the BPG. And this is very much a part of the new TARO with the website redesign. Throughout this document, we're going to point you to, we think you should use this element because DEX says so, basically, not, just that's archival best practice. That's a professional standard. But when it comes to time to upload your finding aids to TARO, if it's website required, it's not a matter of like, this is our opinion or this is even professional standard. This is like, it ain't going to work. So, you'll get those warnings that'll spit it back out if you don't have the website required stuff included. The website warning stuff, many of you I'm sure have already been through this, but it will spit it back out and say, are you sure you want to proceed without listing, the sponsor of who funded encoding this archival finding aid? Yeah, that's fine. We can go on. So you'll get those warnings. And then the website optional, the website's indifferent, DAX might have an opinion, we might have an opinion, but the website doesn't care. So these little sort of tags or labels are laid out throughout the document. With each element, we tell you its status, and you'll see it again in the table, its status of being required by the website or suggested or optional by the website. So that's the type of thing you'll be seeing over and over again. And that's the type of thing where if you don't need to, if you're like using archive space and aren't hand encoding the whole thing, but you have an error pop out, you might just need to refer to that one element and see what's going on here. What am I doing wrong? How can I fix whatever problem I'm getting? So you may see, oh, that was a required element. And how could I format the requirement element that I haven't maybe used before? So with that, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and we're gonna get into the tour of the fun part, which Molly's gonna share with y'all. So take it away.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Matt. And thanks everybody for joining us. For those who don't know me, I'm Molly Holtz, and I am the collection manager at the Austin History Center, and I co-chair standards with Matt. So as Matt said, I'm going to share some information about kind of the heart of the BPG and show you how it's laid out and how we document each element. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. And hopefully everybody can see that. Yes, thumbs up. Yeah. Okay, got some nodding. Cool. So this is the creating of TARO finding aids section, and this is really the heart of this. We're in the actual BPG here, and this section has follows the order of the elements laid out by the TARO website, and it also matches the TARO EED XML template that Christy's going to talk about in a little bit. And so we really tried to be as consistent as possible with terminology across all the TARO tools, getting them all in order. That was a big shift, so that could be super clear. So this is the little kind of mini table of contents to this section. These are all the different sections of a finding aid you're all familiar with, the collection details, the restrictions, the inventory. One thing I do want to point out, there are generic elements that can be used anywhere in a finding aid, such as you're creating a list, or you're putting a link, an internal or external link, or you are formatting something. So all of those kind of generic elements are used, are listed at the end. So I'm going to share two examples of how each element is documented in the BPG. The first example I'm going to do is going to be simple, straightforward, and then the second example will be of a more complex element that consists of two different components. So okay, so here is our first example. And this is of the unit title or title of unit. So every one of elements starts out with the element name. And then, as Matt just discussed, right there at the top, it will tell you whether something is website required or website warning or website optional. And then there's a brief description of the element, and then in this section is also where we tell you if there's any attributes that are also required that go with that element. And then also we do add other bits of information about how this element functions within the TARO environment. So if there's something about the TARO website that is specific for this, in this example, making a note that unit date is no longer allowed inside a unit title, which is something we could do in the past, but that you can't now. So we just try to make sure that information was there. And then there is the link out to the content standard, out to DAX. And so if you want more information, the link also will tell you whether something is DAX required. So this is different than TARO website required, which is up here. And then there's also kind of a structure application. If you need additional information or more examples, the EAD Diva does a great job of really getting into the details about some of these things. It will provide like which attributes are allowed, where the elements can be used, what sub-elements can be contained within an element. You know, there was no point in us reinventing the wheel here. So this is how Matt was talking about before. We're linking out to sources if you need more information. And then we provide examples for every element. These examples are not prescriptive. They're taken from real tarot finding aids. And not every example is going to be exactly the same, because tarot does allow for local practices, and we really want that to be clear. And you know, we tried to take examples from all different repositories as we were working through there. And then Matt talked a little bit about the color coding situation. You know, we just thought it would make it easier to be able to read these examples if there was kind of a standard color coding, but there's no real meaning behind it. It's just trying to help out there. The next example I want to show is physical description, or what we more commonly call extent. So tarot requires that the extent element be nested in the physical description, or the phys desk element. So this is referred to as a parent and child relationship, where the parent element is a wrapper. So this element is documented the same way as we just looked at the unit title. It has the title of it. It tells you whether it's required by the tarot website. But in the description, it will be very clear that it is a wrapper element. And then it will also have that standard information if there's attributes required and that sort of thing. Again, links out to DAX, links out to EAD Diva. I'm going to skip over the EAD 3 note for a second, because what I really want to show you is the extent. So this is a child element, and we have indented the content underneath the wrapper element, and that is what signifies that something is a child element. We also are very clear in the explanation of the hierarchy of the elements here, and then we also are very clear here that it is a child element of what. So we just really hope that that makes it really clear to people who are using that. And then the examples will include both the wrapper parent element and the child element, so that you can see that in practice. So here we've got phys desk, which is our wrapper parent element, and then we can see the extent element put inside the phys desk as the child. I'm just going to scroll back up here. Just Matt talked about the EAD 3. Again, we're not moving to EAD 3, but we do want people to be aware and be able to potentially plan for the future for those kind of things. So, so those are my 2 examples. And so, as Matt said, you can use this BPG in 2 different ways. You know, if you're new to this, you can just start right here in the section about creating tarot finding aids, and you can just scroll your way down. But another option is that the beginning of the BPG has a very extensive table of contents. And so if you are just looking for a specific element that you're having trouble with, you can just click on it and it will take you right there so that you can see that. And then the one other piece, if you're just looking for a quick reference, you don't need all the links or the additional information, you just want to know if something is required or not. We have the BPG guidelines table. This was a table that was at the end of the old version of the BPG. We just updated this with color coding so that you understood what was required and what was website warning. So the things that are highlighted orange are website required, and then things that are highlighted blue are website warning. And, you know, on the left side, all the elements and attributes are listed. You know, the status, again, will tell you about website requirements or not. This will let you know if elements are allowed to be repeatable. The mark column will give you the mark code that needs to be used if the encoding analog is required. So that is, so hopefully those are my two examples. I'm going to stop sharing here. So hopefully that helps you understand how we've formatted this document and tried to provide you with an easy linear document to work through one by one if needed, or to be able to skip, but it's in an order that's very familiar to you because it's how your finding aid is laid out. It's how the XML template is laid out, and then it provides you the links if you need to go other places to get a little bit more information. So next up, Christy is going to do a quick walkthrough of the TARO EAD XML template, and then we'll have plenty of time, I think, for questions.
All right, can one of y'all go back to the slide deck?
I think Matt's, oh, there we go.
There we go. All right. So I'm Christy Netterman. As Matt said, I'm at the City of Dallas Municipal Archives, living in the basement of City Hall. And I know you're a little overwhelmed probably by now with all of that information from Matt and Molly, but bear with me just a few more minutes. And I'm going to introduce you to the template that will make your life so much easier. So why don't we go ahead and go to the next slide, please.
Obviously my Zoom crashed.
Uh-oh, okay.
Let's try that again. Should have a look at the template.
There we go.
Okay,
All right.
sorry about that.
No problem. So to follow along with what Molly just talked about with color coding and all of that, if you are lucky enough to have oxygen, then your life will be much easier using the template because it tells you when you make a mistake. If you are unlucky or just no budgeted, which you can all relate to, then you will probably end up using Notepad, and the colors will be there, but it will not tell you what mistakes you made. And that's where other people's XML projects can come into play, but we'll talk about that in a second. So like I said, Molly mentioned the colors. So the red and the blue that you can see in the example, these do not change. Those are your wrappers, those are your elements, those are all of those kind of high level things into which you put your specific repositories or finding aids information. All right. Some can be deleted if you don't need them. Again, going with, you can make these things specific to your needs. It's not fixed that you have to have an author, for example. If you do want to do that, if your location reports the author of the finding aid, great. If you don't, then you can delete that. Or other fields you may need to use more than once, you can copy them and use them multiple times. But the content itself is set. Whether you use it or not is not. So onto the green information. This is to provide you assistance. These are kind of your help comments. They don't appear anywhere in your final output, so you don't have to delete them. But if it's encased within green, and you can kind of see from the example where it says, enter your TARO repository, enter collection title, that sort of thing. It's your cheat sheet, basically. And again, is very helpful when you're first learning to do this, whether you've done it 1 time or 20 times. You can delete it. Like I said, I don't recommend it. And if you have an error, then going back and looking at the green content may help you figure out what you did wrong, if it's just a typo or you did put in some incorrect information. So going along to the purple content, those are your variables. Some require changing and some permit changing. So for example, in the 7th row down there, you'll see where it says US and then with 4 X's. That content has to be changed, and you put in your DMARC code that you get from the Library of Congress, I think. So you have to put that there, and or it will kick it out. And other things, I can't find another one at this point. But some of the other ones will be available to change. You don't have to. I don't think I have it captured in this example. So like I said, that's your mark. That one example is your mark code, and you have to put it in every doc. That doesn't change. So if you make a template for your repository, once you set it, you can use that in the same template guide every time, and you and your colleagues won't have to change it. But it does have to be done at least once if you're going to go that route. Another example, the language code, for the most part with us, is going to be English, but as Matt mentioned, we are looking into some multilingual things. So maybe you end up putting Spanish or Romanian or Magyar. But right now, for the most part, it's probably going to stay E and G for English. The black content is what you put in for your specific finding aid. Just like if you were creating your own finding aid at any time, that's where you put in your titles and your scope and your, keywords and that sort of thing, dates and weights and all of that. The best thing I can do, along with using this finding or this template, which is a very useful thing to have, and try to, if you use it for your repository, I highly recommend downloading the template, making a set that's specific to your archives, and then locking it so nobody can change it. So it doesn't get accidentally messed up. And then, you just make your copies from that one kind of master template for your site. And, threaten each other with on pain of death that you don't change that template. Again, you can put in your repository code. You can put in you can make it to what your repository is going to look like for its TARO finding aids. If you need help with anything, as Matt has shown, there's lots of folks here. We're going to give you an email list at the end that you can contact any of us. And that's really about it. Oh, my one last thing. The best thing you can do when creating a finding aid is there is a link on the TARO page. Can one of y'all go to a TARO page, Matt? Pull up a finding aid, please.
Oh, you've cornered me into a live demo.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Let's do it. Because obviously I keep TARO bookmarked. It's super important. All right, we're going to just see what happened. This is Texas Tech, Robert. You're on the spot.
All right, so on any finding aid over at the left there, you can see under other versions the raw XML. So go ahead and click that. This is honestly the best way that I have found to see what you're doing and if you're doing it right or wrong. And it really doesn't matter what your repository is doing. If you get errors, you can go and look at either your peers or other repositories and see what the exact same content looked like in the finding aid that worked. And then maybe you'll find you skipped an element, or you made a typo, or you just forgot something. And that's usually what happens. So the template, along with looking at correct finding aids via the TARO website are your two best tactics for getting the most out of the BPG and really having it as a backup to what you're doing. All right, so with that, I can turn it back to Matt and Molly, and if we have any questions, that'd be great.
All right, thank you, Christy, and I'm glad that wasn't too painful and worked out for me with the navigating to the website. But yeah, that's a great idea. That's a good way to show that. That's really helpful, I think. I wish when I was first doing EAD that um, I'd been using that template and been thinking about it the way you just laid it out. So I hope that does help some folks out there. The last thing I wanted to say really is just thank you and acknowledgement to the folks on TARO Standards who've been working on this. Here's our list of who's currently on the committee. Most of us, I don't think all of us, but most of us are here on this call, which is fantastic. I'm glad they could come and encourage anybody else to take advantage of that and try to play a Stump the Standards or some other version of that game. And I'm going to make sure that everybody else on the committee is the one who gets stumped, not me. But then I also did want to give, in seriousness, a special shout out to Juliana Barrera Gomez and Robert Weaver, who were on standards at the time we were doing this work. They have since rolled off, but they really were invaluable contributors to making sure this happened. And we miss them and appreciate their contributions as well. So with that, we're done talking at you, and we would love if you all have questions or feedback. We don't want to just put this online and forget about it. We'd love for you to interact with it. Let us know how it is or isn't helpful. Molly, do you want to say anything else in wrapping up here?
Yes, I mean, I want to reiterate that the whole reason we did put a lot of work into it, and the reason we did it is that we wanted to make something useful. So if there is anything that would be helpful to make it more useful, please, please, please let us know. The other thing, and if anybody has any good ideas about this, is that I would love to get this out of a PDF and out of a Word doc that is not easy to update, honestly, on the back end, and do some sort of interactive web page. I don't know what that looks like, but if anybody has any good ideas about how to make this not such a static document, but something that's better to be able to interact with, please send those ideas our way.
And one other thing, we will have a brown bag about TARO at in Albuquerque in April for SSA. So if any of you are there and want to come hear us talk some more, you're welcome to do so.
Okay, I see a question already. Are there any plans to make the TARO template style sheet more closely matched? Okay, so are you, Andy, are you talking about like the old style sheet that you can use if you're hand encoding and you want to kind of see what it's going to look like? Is that what you're talking about?
We use a style sheet. I don't know about hand. What? I don't know if I understand what you mean by hand encoding. We use Oxygen.
Yeah, okay, that's hand encoding. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, with the new redesigned site, sometimes things don't really match up the same like they used to. I don't know if that's really clear.
Okay.
They're still working out a lot of bugs. So if there's weird spaces now and then, they probably know, and they are still working out some of the coding on the back end that we can't do anything about. So maybe that's part of where your answer lies.
And Andy, how are you using the style sheet? Are you like using it to print out like Word docs to have in the reading room, or?
No, just to see what it looks like before we upload it to TARO.
Okay, gotcha. That was what my question is. And Aaron, I'm not sure if Aaron is still on this call or if he can answer that. My understanding was because we've moved away from that style sheet, the way TARO is now on the website is not using a style sheet. It's different.
Okay.
That there was not a plan to update the style sheet, because I did ask that a while ago. But oh, look, Aaron has unmuted himself, so maybe he has more to say.
I was just going to say that's correct. You're
Okay.
right, Carly.
Okay.
And part of that, sorry. I was
Go
gonna say, part
ahead,
of
Matt.
that is that now that uploading is a pretty much an instantaneous process you manage yourself, as opposed to hand it off and wait a week for it to run. What I've sort of been, my working idea has been that you pretty much just put it online and see how it looks and then delete it if you don't like it. I don't know how that sits with everybody, but that's been I've been doing live tests essentially. I don't know if that works or not, but I know there are, as Christy said, there are other updates coming to the appearance of things on the site.
And Matthew, was that the same question you were asking?
No,
Sorry,
it was, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. No, I mean, the series of issues we were having as the site was when a lot of the finding aids disappeared from not being able to delay. I was waiting in December. There was still some cleanup that I saw, so I didn't know where that stood. If it's stable, if they're still having issues with display or not, if that problem was fully solved. I heard that some of it was finished, but I didn't hear if it was finally solved.
The display issues should be solved. We do have some minor issues with display elements that we're changing the way they look, but finding aids displaying or being missing should be resolved. So if you're seeing issues there, you should please let us know.
Yeah, I mean, the History Center has gone ahead and we're putting all of our stuff up there again, and we have not had any problems. So I think, Matthew, that it's safe to move forward with that again. And any other questions?
Hey, this is Robert.
Hi, Robert.
Hey, I just wanted to point out that in the chat, I did share the dates and locations for the trainings, and there should be information coming out to the listserv and elsewhere about that. But if you're in any of those locations, take a look at the chat and keep an eye out. We'll be signing people up soon.
Hey, Robert, I have a question for you. Is there, not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to, is there any plans to do kind of online versions, or are these things always going to kind of be in person?
We are, by we, I mean TARO has an outreach and education subcommittee, which I encourage anybody on here to join because we always need more members. So nothing's changed, still recruiting. And one of the things the group is excited about is to try to translate the trainings that Amanda Foki and Amy Bowman and I give in person into some easily accessible thing on our TARO's YouTube account. I don't know how long that'll take, but that's the goal.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you guys all for, I think Amanda's on the call too, so thank you guys very much for doing all of that work. And Robert brought up a good point. Like, everybody needs to remember TARO is volunteer. And so a lot of us have been doing this for a really long time, and new eyes, like Christy coming in and providing us with some new eyes to standards and in the steering was great. So we encourage everybody to get involved. Now that we've gotten through the grant and rewriting the BPG, it's really not that much of a time commitment anymore. But we encourage everybody to become involved, because TARO is for all of us, and we want to make it work for everybody, but we need more voices. And there is information about who to contact about that in the steering committee on the TARO Today blog. And that's my pitch. And I don't see any more questions, so maybe, oh, do you have the link to the blog? Yes. maybe. I will get there. Somebody else has
Thank you,
to.
Maristella.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Maristella.
Yes.
Who is fastest?
Yeah.
So cool.
And that, I think, I'm not sure where that stands, but that's been continuously being updated recently too. So if there wasn't something there a few weeks ago, I haven't looked recently, but watch that space as well for more details.
I guess.
I
Matt, are
like
we
it.
ready to let everybody go?
I think so. People love things that don't take the full hour, right? So
Yes.
yeah, no need to make y'all sit here, but thank you all so much for joining us. It's really encouraging to see so many people want to tune in and think about tarot on a Monday afternoon. So we appreciate it, and please do reach out to us. We're happy to be in conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mac and Christy.